Right. This is March the 29th, 2022, and we are continuing our interviews of Blue Trip by Azania Trip. I am now going to give it over to you, Azania.
Hi, Dad. What would you like to talk about today?
Oh, let me see. We haven't talked about maybe the period I spent in Ann Arbor and how I ended up there and began to pursue a graduate degree.
Okay.
All right. Well, what happened after the breakup of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers in around, I think it was around 1970, 71. As you know, John Williams was a graduate of the School of Social Work at the University of Michigan. And he had in his contacts and friends there in Ann Arbor, they had a model cities program. And they needed a person to teach science and math to high school students. So John Williams told me about this position, and I applied for it, and I was hired as basically the coordinator for math and science for Black students primarily who have been pushed out of the high schools in Ann Arbor. So that's what I did. I was teaching again those courses. And
Was that your first official teaching experience professionally?
No, teaching professionally. Well, I did when I was I taught in the Wayne County Community College when I was still living in Detroit, and also I taught grade school kids in fourth and fifth grade at a school on the east side of Detroit. So I have a 1 year teaching experience teaching elementary school kids math and science. Then I had experience teaching at the community college level, teaching social sciences part-time.
And how old were you in these roles, and what was politically happening during those times?
Well, at the time I was a elementary school teacher. I was still working in the legal in Drum, the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement. So that was my job, and also, and then the other, when I was teaching at the community college, I was still involved in the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. When I got the position in 1971 in Ann Arbor, I was no longer working directly with the league because I was living in Ann Arbor, and it was like a full day position. So my full day was taking up teaching these kids, and many of the kids were. A few got kicked out of school, and usually it was kind of low-level stuff, not attending classes, being tardy, those kinds of situations. And in Ann Arbor, they do have you have Black professionals who are connected with the university. Then you have working class kids and some poor kids. So model cities, you have, I was dealing with the kids from working class homes, from low income homes who have not sort of fit in with the mainstream at the traditional high schools, right? And many of these the students they didn't have a strong academic orientation. They sort of felt alienated from the traditional school system, right? And they didn't have a lot of academic discipline, in terms of focusing on studies, and they weren't highly motivated. But otherwise, I like working with them, trying to, because, I value education very highly. And so it wasn't difficult, like teaching them in terms of they were not uncooperative, but they just didn't have a lot of self-motivation for the studies.
And when you were teaching and you were working in drum and doing your other organizing work, did you ever hear students talk about the political movements that were happening around them? Or do you know if they were ever involved, or did you ever hear them having conversations about what was happening in Detroit from a youth perspective, if you happen to
Okay,
recall?
not from the students I was teaching, because these elementary schools, they had no kind of political frame or
Well,
orientation.
sometimes, right? So like at least I know that like when Trump was elected, a lot of times kids will repeat what they're hearing at home of like, oh, my mom is concerned. So sometimes kids share those kind of perspectives because they role model what their environment looks like. So just wondering if even for the high school students or college students that you worked with, is that something that, did you intentionally bring that into the classroom with younger people, or did you wait until you were at the college level and kind of introduce that activism work, or if you didn't do that at all? Just kind of
Okay, when I was teaching at the Santa Maria Center, that was the name of the place, these 4 or 5 year olds, I did not bring up the political thing because I had enough problems just with the management issues, with students staying focused. And see, most of these students were really a couple grade levels below the norm. All right. So I was trying to help them learn how to comprehend what they read. And they had a low level reading skills and math skills, right? So it was just full time. And I don't remember once in there, and they didn't talk about what their parents were saying regarding politics and anything. So it was a very apolitical kind of situation. Now, when I was teaching courses in the community college level, of course, my courses focus on social issues, social science, because I wasn't on a community college level. I was not teaching the natural sciences or math. I was just teaching social sciences. So naturally, that's what I would talk about. And the level of understanding, the students were somewhat aware of what was going on. They didn't have a deep knowledge, but they knew about loosely some broad policies. So this was in the late 60s. So they were well aware of the Black Liberation Movement and the police brutality, those kinds of things they were familiar with.
And what led you into teaching to begin with?
Well, there was a job offer. The last job I held was in Montreal, and that was in an engineering department, and I was basically a programmer. I was looking, there was a job opening, and I did not, at that point, I did not see myself as a school teacher, right? However, there was a job available because I had no direct teacher training. In other words, I never took a course offered by the education department at Wayne State University, you know. So I did not have a teaching license. I wasn't licensed to teach. I just had basically the knowledge and the skills to teach the courses I was teaching. And I got into, when I was teaching these kids, and I knew that if I wanted to continue maybe teaching, I would have to get a teaching license. So my first thought was to enroll at the University of Michigan and take some courses to get a license. And then when I was teaching, I was the sort of coordinator of the math and science program in the model cities. And there were some university students who were placements, some master's students who were placed in this model cities program that I was working in as a math instructor. And so they were, so I was supervising them, and they were telling me about their programs, and they were in graduate programs. And I was supervising them and showing them this and that. And then I said, well, I'm gonna look into maybe some of the programs that they're in. And one of the placement was a master's students in social work. And so I had, some connections in the social work, in the School of Social Work. So I applied for a MSW degree. And I thought I could qualify for it. And then since my original intention was to get maybe a teacher's license, I said, well, and I knew some students in higher education. So I said, well, I think I'll apply for that position in that program too. So I applied for the master's program at the and for a PhD program in the education department. So I applied for both. And so, I took the exams and I qualified for both. So I decided to basically pursue primarily the doctorate and take the social work as a cognate. So the social work program was a cognate program. So my original intention was just to sort of teach maybe high school kids, but since the opportunity opened in these graduate programs, that's how I got into it. So when I came out, the main point is this: when I started my working career, career in Ann Arbor, my intention was not to go to grad school. I was just, I thought I was hooked up just to get licensed. But then I got into it, and I look at folks who were in these graduate programs, and I said, well, I know if they qualify and they can get a degree in this field, I'm quite confident that I can too, right? So that's how I got into the PhD program at the University of Michigan, and I did quite well. I had an A+ average. So I kind of stumbled into it because that was not my plan to become connected with higher education.
So with being a college professor, I'm assuming you've had like a lot of conversations with students and what they professionally want to do, and you're meeting people that are in the beginning of their professional career, in the middle, or transitioning. So it sounds like in the beginning of your career, educationally, you were very focused on like engineering and math, and then we see you pivot towards education, youth development, and then eventually in your current state, utilizing your narrative story to talk about historical traumas that are important for us to all be aware of, to learn. So could you talk a little bit about how you had goals and then how they changed and how they like supported and how, like, I guess, what do you think of that? So you had a particular idea, I'm going to be an engineer. And then you had an idea, well, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then you ended up being a college professor. Could you talk a little bit about how you navigated that path and how you accepted, like, because sometimes it's hard if you change your mind, if you're like really passionate about being a doctor, and then maybe you just, you end up being a vet and you're okay with it, but you had a grandiose idea about who you would become. And now you are who you are. So.
Okay, at the time that I graduated in 1959, I could see myself as being a professional working in a technical field, like engineering, for instance. And then the Black movement changed everything. That was still a primary interest because during my undergraduate career, I stuck with science and math. But but my attention and my focus began to shift more and more into economics and politics and the social and the conditions of oppressed people around the world. So my focus began to shift in undergraduate school, but I still valued math and science because I knew that it was like a breadwinner. I know that those skills were very marketable, so I was going to stick with that. When I got as I got more and more involved in the institution, then I saw it. It began to switch. So one major point here is that if it had not been if the Black liberation movement had not happened, I would have been taking a more of a traditional path, being somewhat conscious and aware, but being basically like a mainstream kind of person in terms of a future and a direction. Okay. So again, let me make the point. The movement changed sort of everything in terms of the path, because I never saw myself as a university professor. Even when I was in a program, I saw myself in higher education. Well, just a moment, I got to see a student come in. There's a program, there's an assignment that you missed. Okay, again, I had a little interruption there. I had to get a student a document. All right. So even when I was in the program, I saw myself more as maybe a researcher or someone in a position to design curriculums for instructors to teach political economy. That's what I saw, and not being so much in the classroom, but at the point I graduated, another person that was in the movement recruited me into a program at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And so that launched me on my teaching career as a professor, right? So it's these kind of things.
So that person invested in you and also kind of changed the trajectory of how you professionally move.
Yeah, well, that person was in the movement, and so that program was part of the movement. And so you can see that I got directly into teaching through people in the movement. Like John Williams, he was the principal at this elementary school. And he said, and so he, kind of recruited me and wanted me to teach the science of math in there. And then he and some of the social work friends kind of gave me, when I had a link to even apply to, if I hadn't had that link, and maybe I wouldn't have been thought about going over to the School of Social Work, right? Because I was just saying, hey, I think I'll just take some courses in education courses so I can get a license, right? And to teach still, my goal was kind of low level until I found out that, hey, those people in those programs, I think I have as much going on as they have, to be successful in those programs, right?
So could you talk a little bit about your motivation? Because I know you mentioned that when you were working with young people, you identified that there was a lack of motivation and also like educational difficulties, but particularly lack of motivation. And it seems that you've been very consistent about motivating yourself. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to do that consistently?
Okay. Um, well, one thing or one motivation is I'm motivated to and curiosity to understand how things work. Right? So I have this. So why is this? So part of it has to be do with maybe intellectual curiosity about finding out things, want to know some information. There was a negative motivation, and the negative motivation was this: is that basically, if you didn't have education, you didn't have skills, the system will kick you to the curve, right? So uh, poor people, people without skills, are treated very badly, and they are not respected. And so I said, I do not want to be a poor person with few skills because the system will do me in. And so I'm a person who basically motivated partly because of my sense of dignity. You know, I want to maintain my sense of dignity and pride. And how do you do that? Well, you have to be worthy, and others have to perceive you as being worthy of respect, because respect doesn't come automatically, right? People say everybody should respect everybody. Well, that's just rhetoric. People have to see some worth of value in you to get respect. So you have to pay. Respect is not free. It doesn't come automatically, right? And so you have to. So it starts with invested in yourself. You have to value yourself, and you are motivated to protect that value and that interest that you have in yourself. And so what keeps me motivated is, I guess, my uh, how I view myself, in my self-worth, in my self-respect. And so it motivates me of that respect. Um, and what motivates me is also anger. I'm angry when I see injustice. So I'm constantly heavily motivated by seeing all of these outrageous injustices in the world. And that keeps me motivated. Just a sense of anger and rage against against injustice, social injustice. So those things, my value system, my sense of self-worth, and my image of myself.
So, with being born in the South and migrating, and the third wave of other Black migrants to the North, you've seen a lot of images and have personal experiences and extended family of like not seeing dignity within the Black community. Can you define a little bit about like what is this like? Can you define it? What it means for you as like Luke Samuel Tripp? Like what is dignity for you? How do you want people to treat you that makes you feel like you are being treated with dignity?
Okay. What does dignity look like, right? Dignity, and we can talk about another thing about respect and self-respect and social respect. Right? And let me put it broad in terms of just related to the movement, and that about, in general, part of my identity is being Black, and Black and being disrespected. The ultimate in terms of being disrespected is to be treated like a subhuman, being enslaved and being not even recognized as a full human being. That's the ultimate of disrespect. And so that means the system has been stripped you of your dignity, right? And says that, you're trash, you're nothing. So the struggle for liberation is at one level is a struggle for dignity. Dignity, the dignity that comes with being a human being, right? So, and then to live in an environment that doesn't acknowledge your dignity, that devalues you, will keep you in a constant state of discomfort and anger. And you fight that system that operates to strip you of your human dignity, right? So if you don't have a sense of self-respect at that level, then you're fair game, right? Because you have those, I mean, somebody mistreats you, you don't react because maybe you don't have a sense of self-worth. But people with self-worth and a sense of self-respect, and that many times you see low-level fights for breaking out. You know, somebody is gonna diss you. You know, you're gonna step on. You're going to basically cross people's boundaries, right? That you can treat them anyway. And so that's what usually in human beings, when they feel mistreated, that means they're being disrespected. That means people not acknowledging their dignity. That's usually going to be conflict, right? So if people who feel themselves less worthy or less valued than some, then they're usually deferential, right, to it. They say that person has more dignity than I would defer to them because, you know, maybe they're better than or something like that. Okay. So to me, dignity is a sense of self-worth, and when certain kind of boundaries, whenever certain kinds of boundaries are crossed in a negative way, people with a strong sense of dignity react to it. Right? Because you don't want somebody to disrespect you because they're devaluing your dignity that you carry. And that's why a lot of times that should dictate your behavior. I won't do that because it's shameful. I have a protection. I have a vested interest in my image, in the things I'm vested in. You know, it's just like maybe a professional person just cut loose and start acting like a teenager and all that sort of thing. And, you know, they lose a lot of status, right? And they say, keep it professional and all of that. And if you stoop down to the level of below your image, and then you almost feel a loss. You say, I lost it. You know, I should have kept my bearings. So people with a strong sense of dignity, you have to be disciplined because sometimes people can tick you off and you break discipline. You know, you start responding and reacting to them, and they'll bring you down to their level. So you always have to kind of pause and say, wait, you know, and process some stuff because it's very easy for people to bring you down to a lower level. Yeah, in a high emotional state.
So with this form of identity and values and integrity, what helped you through your academic, particularly through your PhD program? Because that seems to be like quite a milestone to get through. How did these forms of integrity and dignity support you in completing this degree that gave you a foundation?
Mm-hmm. Well, number one, I had a very high estimate of my academic abilities. You know, when I was in my programs, I didn't have a feeling that, do I belong here? Yes, I did belong there because I thought I was, I thought I was competitive, and my thinking, my level of thinking, my cognitive ability, my level of understanding uh, was as good or better than theirs. Right? So yeah, you have to feel that you're in the right place, you know. So it's like a feeling confidence, right? And it's a confidence that that's based on performance. It's a confidence that is based on hard work. I knew that if I didn't do the work, you know, it's not going to come kind of naturally, and I can't make a moderate kind of effort and expect a very high level of performance. You know, there's a correlation. If you want to perform that high, you got to the work that you got to put in it has to correspond to the level you want to be at. And so having a strong sense of confidence that I could do it if I put in the work, right? And I had to discipline myself and not get distracted by some of the things, because success was not a given. And in those programs, I mean, there were some rigorous standards there, and you had to meet them. So it wasn't so much I was competing against other students. I had an idea about the standards and what I wanted to do and what was necessary to do. So I was kind of focused on, what are my aims? What are my goals? And sometimes the goals weren't very sharp, but I knew, so I was operating on values. What are those values? A lot of those values were intellectual values. I value understanding things. And to understand things, I knew that I had to, it required a lot of time and energy to master certain things, to master some skills, to acquire the knowledge and understand the knowledge. And, and at an institution like University of Michigan, that's what you have to do, And so so for me, I was driven again by my values, and my sense of self, and my sense of who I am. And I got to have a sense about, I'm going to define myself. I'm not going to the system is not going to define who I am. And so all of my reactions, going into political self-exile, defying the travel ban to go to Cuba, fighting against racism and all, I am not going to let that system beat me down and define who I am. I'll define who I am, and I'll do what's necessary to fight back. So that's been, my whole orientation of not letting people just use the cookie cutter and then come up with with the shape that they want to make me in. No, I will shape myself. I don't have full control over who I am. I understand that, but I want to maximize my freedom, and I'm going to maximize whatever power I have, right? So you have to sort of, you have to figure out you're in a certain kind of environment, you're in a certain kind of milieu, and you go in and you're shaped to a great extent by a lot of external factors, right? So my identity, I'm basically I'm going to process and think about who I am, because you are a multiple being, or you have multiple identity. I know you know this, right? So who am I? I'm the son of Luke Tripp Sr. and Dorothy Tripp. That's who I am. I'm their oldest son. I'm a brother of my siblings. I'm a father, I'm this, I'm that. How do I get in things? I didn't choose my parents. I choose my wife, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of choices I do make, right? But I try to If I want a quality life, I better make quality decisions. That's a principle. If you want a quality life, you better make quality decisions. If you just make haphazard decisions and go in there with no kind of standards or rules, your life is going to be problematic, okay?
How do you bring these, when did you start bringing these philosophies and these understandings into the classroom as a professor? Or are these more of your personal beliefs and you don't blend them into the classroom? Where does this knowledge, where do you want this information and this like a way of living to exist and to help others?
Well, I many times implicitly and explicitly, these values are expressed, right? And first, well, for instance, in teaching, you know, being structured and making commitments. For instance, when you sign up for a class, you say the class meets from 10 o'clock to 10:50, right? And so I said, this is our class. This is the time we meet. And so what do? I don't care if, students are still coming in. I don't care if it's half of them. I'm going to start off. I'm going to announce the time, and then I'm going to announce roll call, right? So that's what, and then what I'm doing is I'm training them. That class starts at 10 o'clock. I'm not going to wait and say, well, I'll wait until 5 after more students come in. No, that's training them that they have a 5-minute, a buffer zone or no. That's why they figure I don't have to be there right. No, I start on time, and they come out that late, and that's being basically in terms of having something well structured. If you say things going to meet at that time, then that's when it starts, right? And then they don't want to be Mark Lake and all that, and then they have a tendency to try to be there by 10. They don't say, well, just drag along. Well, it doesn't matter. You're not going to take roll until not 5 or 10. No. So the point here is that you model what you want to teach. I tell my students that I assume that you want to be college educated professionals. And this is proper professional behavior. You do what you say you want to do. And you do that in little things and big things, right? So again, you do it basically when I teach. I try to teach how I approach things, how our professionals approach things, right? So it's all kind of integrated in terms of behavior and in terms of certain things I say explicitly. And when I talk about maybe things like healthcare and the environment, I'll go and begin to talk about, lectures on health, on diet, on exercise, and the value it has as a student, a proper sleep. If you want to be productive, you want to be able to basically stay awake in class. You can't, it won't happen if you're staying up at 2 or 3 o'clock, socializing, and you got a 9 or 10 o'clock class at 12 o'clock, you're going to be dozing off. That's, your body is just going to shut down like that, And so sometimes kids will be right up there and dozing off. They haven't regulated their schedule, and their body is going to shut down whether they like it or not. So you have to practice discipline. Okay, I know if I stay up 12 or 1 o'clock, I'm going to doze off at 2. So then you shouldn't be lollygagging and doing all those things at 2 or 3. Okay? And then you shouldn't be sitting in and reading a book when you definitely, when those paragraphs just change to sentences and sentences change to words, and you just sitting there and say, well, I'm going to stay from 8 to 9. Actually, you only study from 8 to 8:15. The other things, you dozing off, right? So you would have been better to take those little naps and all that so that you can refresh and you'll be more productive, right? And so they said, well, since I was in the chair in there from that, well, I put in my study hours. No, you didn't. You know, you were there, but you weren't really studying all that because your body wasn't adjusted and it couldn't accommodate and really benefit from what you're doing, from your reading, right? Okay. So you got to know how your body operates. You got to discipline yourself. You got to know how to maximize uh, your efforts, right? So if you're making an effort, but you can't maximize it because other conditions have not been met, proper rest, proper nutrition, overscheduling yourself, you know, socializing too much, all this stuff, you know, you got too many things going on, right? So that's what happens. A lot of folks, they don't make much progress. And one thing that's basically less lacking, I see time and time again, is they are not practicing self-discipline. You know, they uh, uh, just going with feelings. Oh, I feel like doing this. I feel like doing that. Well, you know, well, how are you going to do that if this is the goal and this is the objective and this is the things you have to do, and you're spending a lot of times over here because you feel like doing that? You know, that's childlike. Right? That's childlike. And so, discipline in the sense of maturity. When you also have those things going for you, you're gonna realize most of your goals. Not all, you know, nobody ever kind of maybe achieve all their goals, but you win more than you will achieve more than you lose, that's for sure. And without that sense of maturity and that discipline, self-discipline going for you, you're going to be at a loss. Those are necessary. Those are necessary.
So the last question, the last wrap-up question I'll ask is, what are 3 things you're working on now that you that you feel support your integrity, your dignity, your practices? What are goals or projects that you're working on now? And could you tell us at least 3?
Okay, one is my autobiography, right? So I think it's we need a kind of historical record for at least one of the trips, right? So that's very important, and it's also a tool to understand my own life. Okay, I'll go up there and I'll see what stages, so it informs me, so I can have a deeper understanding of the meaning of my life and what I've been trying. So the autobiography is something, one project. The other project I want to contribute more to the local Black press. In the last month, I've written 2 articles. It's very important that I use my skill and my knowledge to educate, you know, like the Black community through the newspaper, right? So I do that. One other project that let me see, I'm thinking of is projects I continue to do is to update my my teaching plan and figure out better ways I can be a more effective teacher, right? Because teaching is that's one of my motivations for this teaching position, is that I have a platform to influence particularly younger people, you know, who are going through the college system, and I think it's very important that they are aware of and they understand the world that they live in, right? Understanding themselves and understanding how the system works. So I feel that I can make a contribution. You know, that's why I'm not retiring. I have a platform and I have a job to do. When I was in the movement, you're about education. You're about educating people. You got to keep yourself educated, and it's a way to keep psychologically and physically healthy. You got to be active if you want to stay healthy, physiologically and mentally, particularly someone my age, right? So those are some goals, is to become an effective teacher, keep myself up to date, keep current, stay relevant. The autobiography, and hopefully write more articles for the newspaper, so I can share uh, my knowledge with the masses, with the public.
Thanks.
Okay. Get comrade. Let me see. I gotta